$3,451,405. The proposed budget, the Rainbow Lakes Estates Municipal Service District, includes a 1.25 mil property tax millage rate. The proposed district millage rate is the same as that of the current 2023-24 fiscal year. The Rainbow Lakes Estates Municipal Service Tax Unit for Recreation Services and Facilities includes a 0.85 mil property tax millage rate. The proposed MSTU millage rate is the same as that of the current fiscal year 23-24. Estimated property values have been used for the purposes of budget preparation. As presented, the total proposed budgets represent a decrease of $586,266, or 14.52%, from $4,037,671 for adopted fiscal year 23-24 to the proposed budget of $3,451,405 for fiscal year 24-25. I would point out that we do not have carry forwards included in this budget. We would anticipate one-time capital would increase that number when we go to adoption. Final adoption of the tentative millage rates and budgets will take place at duly advertised public hearings to be held during the month of September. Adjustments made necessary by changes in final property values per parcel assessment rolls and fund balance carry forward will be made prior to the final adoption of the budget. Sincerely, Gregory C. Carroll, Urban Court Comptroller. In the handouts today, I'm going to kind of go through them briefly here. The four funds that we are looking at are Rainbow Lakes Estates MSD, Rainbow Lakes Estates Community Residential Facilities, Rainbow Lakes MSTU for road improvements, and the Rainbow Lakes Estates Fire Protection MSBU. On page 3 is a summary of the revenues for the Rainbow Lakes Estates MSD. The taxable property value estimate was an increase of 17.9% over the prior fiscal year. The actual estimated fund balance for fiscal year 2024 was $1,074,344. So there was an increase going into this fiscal year currently, and it's being used for some capital improvements. Interest income, I want to point out on here, has rebounded and is reflected in the fund balance anticipated for 24 as well as for fiscal year 25. On page 4, you'll notice that the cost centers, there's two here, the Rainbow Lakes Estates General Government and the Road and Street MSD. Road and Street is actually supposed to be going to zero this year, and I'll talk about that here in a few moments. But the Rainbow Lakes Estates is the primary cost center that is being funded. On page 5, this is a summary of the actual cost expenditures. For the most part, the expenditures here are not fluctuate very much. I'll defer to chat on any questions that you may have as far as operating expenditures. I will, however, point out that the other current charges, property appraiser and cost allocation, there's a little bit of a shift there, and that's because the property tax appraiser's budget is based on the taxable value collected as a percentage of the total. However, admin costs are an 8% cap. In prior years, the cost allocation has been understated because we take the taxable value, the tax property appraisers out, and the tax collector, and then whatever's left of that 8% can then be charged to cost allocation. So those three combined cannot exceed the 8%. So in this year, there's a shift. The property tax amount went down, but the cost allocation has come up, and we're still not recovering 100% because it is still, the cap exceeds what we are allowed to recover. So I do want to point out that there's a little bit of a shift there. Page 6, you'll notice that there is funding, capital improvement funding. This is one-time capital into the future. The reserve for cash carry forward is just under 20% of the fund balance. This is a good place. We've been trying to slowly over time increase our cash carry forwards, get closer to 20% so that they have adequate cash flow until taxes come in December. So this is a good, healthy spot. We want to maintain this percentage with this fund, and then they still have some funds available for reserve for contingencies for choices that the department makes during the year if they are needed or excesses and expenses. Page 7 has your personnel detail. There's no significant changes to the distribution of the FTEs in this proposed budget. Page 8 has your capital improvement. This is future capital is to be decided, that's fund balance excess. And then there is a request for a SUV. And then page 9 This is an oversight on my behalf. The insurance premiums should have been charged to Fund 1302, where we moved all of the road maintenance from the MSD to the MSTU. I did not recode the insurance paperwork in my staff correctly. I entered it where I had it coded and I didn't update it. So this was my error. What I'd like to do, consent of the board, is remove this. This will become $0. That funding would then go into the future capital. That will be increased. But on the other side, I would need to add this expenditure into 1302 and make an adjustment in that fund accordingly. Is there any question on that? I think we're good. Okay. We'll make that adjustment so that this becomes a 0. It's not going to increase or modify any taxes that are levied. On page 10, you'll see that the personnel that went with this were moved out last year. And they're still there. And that's the end of the RLE MST. The MSTU for recreation.
On page 6.
Page 6.
For the cash carry forward, we said we are not at the 20%.
That reserve for cash carry forward is just under the 20% mark.
What do you need to get to 20%? Can we take some money from the capital set aside to make the reserve?
It's so close that it's, I can add a little bit to it, but it's probably like $1,000 or something.
Yeah.
With line, it's very good.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can do it if we need to, but it's an inexpensive spot.
Shut up.
And for the community recreation, again, we have our revenues on page 11. There was an 18% increase in the taxable property value. Notable increase in the fund balance is due to a one-time fund transfer of $138,604 in fees that were collected for recreation, but previously recorded in Rainbow Lakes Estates MSD. Finance worked with MSTU to go back and identify those transactions, and we did transfer in the current fiscal year. So that's why you see that balances forward jump up as much as it does. It's that one-time transfer. Page 12, you'll see the balance of the cost center. On page 13, that again, you'll see the reserve for cash carry forward has about the same, but you'll see that the capital improvement funding is where the bulk of that $138,000 was placed in the carry forward. Some of it is being used for some capital in the current years, I understand. Page 15, skipping over 14 because it just has the total. Page 15 has the positions, no significant changes for the positions in the proposal. The capital equipment on page 16, the capital improvements is unspecified, and then there's an allocation for gym equipment, upgrades in machinery and equipment for the forthcoming year. And that's everything on fund for the recreation. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions. Aubrey, could you just check your mic and make sure your mic is turned on?
Mike, coffee. Is that better? Sorry. All right. I talked really loud so I could hear myself good. Fund 1302, the Rainbow Lakes Estates MSTU for road improvements. This is a special assessment fund. Per parcel rate, I believe is $82 is still the same. Any changes was an increase in the number of properties on the tax rolls. The balance forward does not include any capital committed in fiscal year 24 at this time. I believe there will be some items that will walk forward.
We do have a new system on order. It is in process.
I'll try to talk loud.
Move to the next seat.
All right. The contracted road construction, this is where all the funds were moved to do any of the road improvements. Cost center here, you have your salaries and wages where all the personnel were moved from Rainbow Lakes Estates MSD to this fund in fiscal year 24. Notable here, this is where the account 545101 insurance premiums will be added and the $20,119 to be added. And then we will reduce the road improvements, road and bridge by the same amount to keep the fund in balance. So that's where that will come out in this fund. On page 20, the position controls. Yes,
Audrey,
ma'am.
so what is in the maintenance, buildings and grounds of this fund?
That may be a question for Chad.
Yeah, that'd be a question for Chad.
546101, right? Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Five, 4, 6, 101, there are shop gate openers for repair and replace, garage door repairs, 3 garage door safety sensors, general ground and maintenance and repairs, and then they're gonna redo the entrance and median of the Rainbow Lakes Estates community.
Okay, so in that part, is that the front off of 41?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
The one I have there.
All right, on page 20, the position, the FTEs are unchanged from the current year. On page 21, it includes the detail on the machinery equipment for 2 replacement pickup trucks that are being requested. Then the road improvements is unspecified based on contracts that come forward. And that's everything for that fund. Any questions? All right, our last fund detail is the Rainbow Lakes Estates Fire Protection MSBU. This is the 3rd and final year of phasing this fund out and then transferring it over to fire rescue. Their final year of the assessment, there's some interest income that is coming into the fund, a little bit of fund balance. And then on page 24, you'll see that the total amount of any revenues increase would then be transferred out to fire rescue or cost allocation for the final year. We may end up having to do a supplemental budget when everything's said and done. If there's some interest income that we haven't captured, that we will finalize the supplemental budget. But that will be after the end of the 25 fiscal year. Any questions on that? People good? The last few pages are long-term financial estimates. So on page 25 here is kind of a history of the property tax. Important to note, the new construction for fiscal year 24-25 is 52% of the taxable property increase. So more than half of the increase in taxable value is due to new construction, not increases of assessments on existing property owners. I think that's important to kind of note. We don't have a construction value for Wayne. They don't provide their estimate of the construction relative, so that's just a mirroring piece of it. They did have a pretty significant increase in their taxable values. The impact on that on page 26, looking at maintaining the current millage, revenues having some anticipated moderate growth, new construction of 5 to 6%, and expenditure staying in line with that. It's looking like the fund will be in a good position, healthy, moving forward. There'll be some expenditures and fund balance going down. Ultimately, we do want to see the fund balance come down more, but we want it to come down being used on capital one-time purchases. So that it gets more into where that money is being used to make the improvements that are needed in here. But we always want to make sure that the recurring revenue and recurring expenditures are comparable to one another. So right now, I am seeing the recurring revenue and expenditures staying on pace with one another. It's something to be monitored, but it is not an element that I would really be concerned with at this time of the year. The Rainbow Lakes MSDU for recreation. We raised that millage in 24-25, keeping it flat for 24-25. I'm sorry, we raised it 23-24, keeping it flat in 24-25. Again, you have that significant increase in the new construction is 56% in this fund. We'll continue to monitor the permits and new construction and recording fees to see if there's any trend of a change on that regard. And then the final page here is the financial forecast for that fund. You'll notice the big line of peak in 23-24, that's that one-time transfer in the revenue. And then after that, we're looking at the recurring revenues and expenditures. Their expenditures are slightly exceeding the revenues over time. And I don't want to raise a flag because we don't have enough history on the true expenditures of this fund at the new operations to be able to determine if those expenditures are really going to be at that level or if they're going to be slightly less. It's definitely not concerns for 25 or 26. We'll continue to monitor it. Once I have a year or two of history, I'll be able to project with a little bit more confidence on where that's going. But right now, that millage, the growth in property tax value and keeping expenditures kind of relatively close to that, and being mindful of what programs we add and keeping it in sync with the revenue, this fund looks like it's going to be in a good position for several more years as well. And that's the last of my presentation. If anybody has any questions for me?
Any questions for Audrey? I think we're good at the moment. So thank you, Audrey. Thank you to you and your team in getting these budget projections put together. I would like to open it up for public comment. If there's anyone, which we're so glad to see you here this morning. Thank you for being with us. Any comments or questions?
I've never been out. Good morning. I'm George McKay, Vice Chair of the Lakes Advisory Board. And we have some concerns. I just prepared some stuff. I'll read it. All right. Our Rainbow Lakes Estates, as you all know, is a municipal service district codified by special act of the Florida legislature in Act 2001-293. It originally dates back to its creation in 1969. We are not a municipal service tax unit like Marion County, Silver Spring Shores, and Hillsborough, California. In the past, much more cooperation with our board was received from the county as to having direct input into the running and operations of RLE. As a rapid turnaround of MSD directors, and in particular during COVID, any input in planning RLE's future or operations have gone by the wayside. As it stands now, it seems to be merely a rubber stamp for pushing local capital. In fact, much that occurs is news to the board. The director tells us what is going to happen. This is not only unfair to our residents, it is not in keeping with precedent, like what I believe was the intent of the special act authorizing RLE in the first place. As a result of lack of input, I was hesitant to vote vote for the last budget. I expressed my reluctance at the time. I would like to ask for your help with this, the board. Please encourage your three responsible county employees, Chad Wicker, Katie Freeman, and Katie Burton, to engage with the board or perhaps even discuss these things at our meetings prior to budgeting and or implementing anything of consequence affecting our residents. This might make our meetings longer, but I think it would be more productive if all of us were aware of what was coming down the pipe, and maybe, just maybe, we would have some stellar ideas that would save time and money and make improvements in operations more efficient. Chad, Katie, and Katie have been doing some great work for us. However, for this board to not be involved with what is the future of RLE is counterproductive at best and doomed to fail at worst. We have also had a bad experience with the sheriff over crime watch, as you may be aware of. RLE had a crime watch administered by Marion County Sheriff for over 25 years, run by David Shelton, who did a great job. They patrolled all of RLE, including Marion and Lee counties. In 2003, a minor fender bender occurred in the Levy portion, and within 2 days, all patrols in Levy were stopped. There had been an agreement dating back to 1999, which was intersecting sheriffs at the time, and to authorize this, so nothing was being done on tour. After our attempt to rectify that, none of the existing members wanted to work for the sheriff and quit. Is there anything that you can do to help us get coverage for Levy County residents? Levy Crime Watch does not patrol RLE at all, and they receive scant patrol from the county. And I thank you for your kind attention, and look forward to working with you in the future. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Mr. McKay. Before you step away, you did cite that you didn't believe that you were getting enough interaction with our MSTU interactions?
If we had the availability, I know with the sunshine law, we can't have private meetings or anything like that, so it all has to be in the public. But, if we could have the planning discussed and hash out in meetings instead of in a Ocala. Because if it's just happening in Ocala, it's not our people doing it. And that's when, you get a loggerheads, and people bristle when they're told that's what it's gonna be. You're told what you're gonna do. You're told what you're able to do. And that's not right. Folks, you guys work for us. We don't work for you. We work for our residents, period.
So do you all hold your own set of meetings out here? And
We hold a monthly meeting, yes.
is our MSTU group invited into those meetings?
Yes. Most of the times we're all there. And we have a representative from the sheriff also.
Okay, so they are participating in your meetings.
They're there, yes.
So is it just the interaction and engagement that you're talking? I'm
Engagement.
just trying to understand and how to help and some.
Engagement, like, you take a look at the items on the board, or on the budget, most of which we didn't hear about until after it had already been planned. We know nothing about it. And quite frankly, how can we advise about anything we don't know about it? We've also brought things to the attention of the county, road situations and so forth, and nothing happens. We have a population problem here. It's exploding. And we have a lot of growth coming in, and our roads are going to pop. We have some of the sides, the berms, we've got drop-offs this big in some of those things. And they're not addressed. If they're not being addressed, somebody will get hurt. And I just feel it's going to be, I don't see anybody getting hurt, but I also don't want the lawsuit. Because it's something that should have been taken care of years ago. Okay?
Yes.
So before this meeting, do you guys not have a budget workshop where you get the proposed budget and discuss that at your monthly meeting?
Right, but all of the stuff into it,
Yeah.
we knew nothing about. We weren't involved in, well, hey, let's put this into the budget, or let's take this out because we don't need it.
That's what I'm asking. So you didn't have a budget workshop ahead of time.
Right.
So when did you get the proposed budget?
Dan? You'll look it up.
Yeah. No problem.
But,
So I mean, even for our budgets, as Audrey goes through, they're gonna basically, for the most part, give you last year's budget with some tweaks. I mean, that's typically how this thing works. But I don't see at one of your meetings why whatever you guys want to do is, I mean, every other MSTU has that same process where they put a list of priorities.
It's a municipal service district.
I understand, but it functions.
The processes are still.
We still have citizen boards. They try to put their priorities. Typically, they work with our MSTU director and the team. If you're not getting that response, then we can certainly fix that. That's not a problem. But if there's something that you want or priorities that you want, then you should ask them to put that in the proposed budget at your monthly meeting. I'm assuming you got it before today.
We did get
You
a,
cannot speak to the
Yeah.
audience, you have to.
Come up.
Yeah, just give your name and address for
Sorry.
the record.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. First off, thank you for coming today. We appreciate it.
Name
we
and
did-
address, please. Name and address.
Yes, my name is Dan Wilshes, and I am the leading county representative on the board. Address 10430 Southeast 126 Terrace, Rainbow Lakes Estates. To answer your question, yes, we did have a workshop. We did go over the numbers, we did discuss them amongst ourselves with the MSTU department and their liaisons. But then the budget went back, and then it was re-presented to us with the changes. Changes were made, they were happening. We didn't, it was kind of like, oh, hey, where did this come from? What was the discussion? What is the issue? For instance, the replacement vehicles. We had asked for a vehicle even a used one to use for like our loan closet and that sort of thing. And that wasn't even entertained or discussed much with the MSTU. The board brought it up and it was shot down, okay? But then we are asked to approve a budget that has 3 new vehicles in it. So one of my questions was, okay, how did that occur after we asked for it? One, now I understand what happened. It makes sense to me. The vehicles of age, they need to come off the books, they're not passing their annual inspection. So they replace the vehicles. But these are the types of things we're talking about. And I was going to address you guys as well, although Mr. McKay did hit on some of the topics that was concerning to me when we approved the budget. I also wanted to let you guys know that for me, I approve the budget because for the community and district as a whole, this budget works and moves the district forward. That is imperative, okay? However, there are at least 4 items in this budget that I have concern with, that are changes. One of them being now that we're paying 1/3 of a salary for a manager, MSTU manager, that is not present. Normally, we pay for salaries for those staff members that are present on site to assist us and the residents. This position is not one of them. This is a position that operates in the MSTU. Normally, that wouldn't be a big issue. However, you are collecting tax funds from Lee County residents to support and staff an MSTU person that is in Marion County. And I bring this up because the sheriff brought it up when they canceled our crime watch, because they can't cross county lines. There's jurisdictional issues. Well, are those issues still the same? You know, so I was a little concerned about that, and I wanted a little more in-depth conversation on this. The other thing that I was concerned about was last year we approved the budget, and in that budget we were promised things like a part-time recreational staff member, so we could increase our recreational hours here, so we could get return on cost for capital improvements that have been made, like the purchase of kayaks and so on and so forth. Those items sit dormant because on the weekends there's no staff. So nobody's available to rent those items. How do we make money off of that? Okay? We also wanted to increase the hours for our youth center. We can't do that with one staff member in recreation. We need that other part-time FTE. One of the other things that, because I do meet with my constituents out in the leading residents, one of the things that was concerned was that they're paying into the general government assessment, and we don't feel as though we're really getting any services in Lee County or representation from Marion, okay? When we bring issues up, predominantly council tells us, well, that is because Marion County has offset those services to Lee County. But I go to the board meetings. I speak with my commissioners. They know RLE, they know me, they're very familiar with it. They're limited in what they can do without interaction from this board. They don't know how much they can do because there is no communication or conversation between the 2 counties. And that's something that goes back a ways. And that goes back to our zoning issues that we have problems with. We have since rectified that somewhat. The last thing that I was concerned about was the same thing that George had said about working with the MSTU. We need them. They need us. I want to work with them. So far, Chad Wicker has been amazing, and the 2 Katies have done just amazing jobs for us, okay? But we find ourselves reacting, not acting as a unit together for the benefit of our residents and others.
Let me see if I can recap what your issues were. You're questioning why the Rainbow Lakes Parks and Rec knows.
Yeah, that's fine, it's our recreation department, that means, yes, we're on the same page.
And no services are being provided to the Levy County residents. And,
Well, I'm sorry, there is an exception.
yeah, clear that up for me.
Roads and maintenance, I mean, in the past year, they are stellar. They have been easy for me to work with, they're responsive, they have done an amazing job for us. That's the only department that we really get any assistance out of. General government, no.
And no communication between the county representatives. I'm not sure how that plays in, but I hear your issue. And then the interactions with our MSTU group, but yet I'm hearing that they're working well with you, so I'm trying to.
They are on specific tasks, but I think.
Which is
at
why
this-
I'm asking,
Right.
what does good look like to this board?
Okay, I'll give you the answer to that. We know, I mean, I've been in government for a long time. There is a long-term or long-range plan for this district. Could we share that? Let this board know what the long-range plan is? Because I think if we had that, this board within the MSD could assist the main board in accomplishing those goals. But we don't know what the long-range plan is. We go from month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year, but we don't know what is the plan for 5 years down the road. What is the plan for 10 years down the road? Does the commission have a vision for the district? We don't know. It's not communicated to us.
Okay, I don't even know if we have one. We look at, I mean, I've never seen a long-term or long-range plan for this particular district. So, but we'll get your questions answered. Is there anything else?
No, ma'am, that was it. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Well done.
So, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
So let's address the sheriff. I mean, you guys need to work through the two sheriffs. Commissioner Ryan's a great liaison, and at the end of the day, if there's a communication between the two boards, typically when it's in someone else's district, Commissioner Ryan is your district commissioner, we'll let her know your thoughts. You can share them again, but she'll communicate with whoever the district representative is for Levy County, and that's a better way for us to communicate. I do the same thing in mine.
That would be Desiree Mills.
Yeah, so let those two folks work together for communication between the two commissions, and she can bring back, other stuff to our commission. I do the same thing in some other
And I
areas.
did reach out to our Levy County Sheriff.
Yeah,
But I was told that they do
Well-
not do neighborhood patrols and have not done it in over 5 years. So when we reach out in Levy County, we're reaching out after the issue has occurred.
yeah.
And
You know,
what we're looking for
and
is
if your
some
sheriff-
sort of presence.
Right, but
Come
if your-
through, roll car through.
if your sheriff doesn't want to patrol or set up a citizen patrol, I don't know what we're going to do about that. On the other hand, I do know that there are, with our fire department and our sheriff department, there are multi-agency, agreements, interlocal agreements,
There
and they
is.
can cross-deputize. So,
That serves news to me, thank you.
Yeah,
Because
so-
I actually asked
so
that
our
specific question.
sheriff deputized, for instance, in my district out in the Ocala National Forest, right? Both Lake County and Marion County
Mhm.
cross-deputized because they run the water patrol. Part of the water is in Marion County, part of the water is in Lake County. Lake County's the one with the Marine unit there. They all work together. So if they arrest somebody in Marion County or they arrest somebody in Lake County, they have the same powers. They do the same thing in cities, right? With Denellen and with Ocala and with Bellevue. A lot of times they cross-deputize, so if a city officer, ends up following somebody outside of a city line, they can still make an arrest.
Right.
So those things do happen, but something would have to, I mean, if you wanted from Marion County Sheriff to take care of that, then typically he'd figure out some kind of charge for you or something like that. I mean, I don't know what they would do, but
Well, and this comes back to.
and really, you should talk to your sheriff and say, hey, sheriff, you need to provide a presence out here, get your tail out here.
And
It
we
works for you
have,
too.
the issue is that they go so far and then they have to stop. Because according to the charter that was set by the legislature, it's this board and Marion County that is responsible for providing the services. And in the charter, it stipulates, it recognizes the fact that the district resides in 2 counties. But it clearly puts the responsibility on this board to provide the services. And if you are, please let us know who to contact so we
I
can
mean,
make sure that
that's
the
a great
services
point.
are
I think
getting
our attorney
provided.
needs to address that, and we'll bring it back to our county attorney. If that's the case, then we will have no problem charging you the MST for law enforcement and providing that service. I mean, that's an easy fix, so,
Thank you, Commissioner.
yeah.
So Commissioners, I recently was brought into this issue and actually reached out to the sheriff's office myself and talked to the liaison for this district. There was an agreement in place for many years where there was essentially a neighborhood watch that allowed patrols in both the Levy County portion and the Marion County portion of Rio Lake Estates. There was an issue, it was a little bit more than just a fender bender, where the sheriff's vehicle was in Levy County, was involved in an accident. At that time, the sheriff made a determination that his patrol vehicles and any vehicles that were under the sheriff would no longer be able to patrol into the Levy County side. The special act gives authority to Marion County to provide law enforcement services. Traditionally, we have done that with, on the Levy County side, Levy County will make arrests, will do whatever they need to do on the Levy County side, and Marion does it on our side. At the last few advisory board meetings, Mondeluzzo has indicated that they have stepped up through the Denellen COPS program and are patrolling the Marion County side. I have encouraged, my conversations with the sheriff are, they are not going to patrol into the Levy County side. And traditionally, it's that Levy County does not patrol within subdivisions or neighborhoods. Marion does. So we've explored different things that we can do, but it really lies with speaking with Levy County as to what law enforcement services additional they can provide on their side. Marion County residents do pay into the MST for law enforcement, and if that's something that the board wants to explore, Levy County has to agree to allow those residents to be assessed for it because they do provide it as part of their general service.
So can you bring us back recommendations and go ahead and reach out to the Levy County Sheriff's Office and find out? So what was it an insurance claim issue with the accident? What was the issue, Dana?
So based on my conversations with the sheriff, it was that the vehicle was being used more as they were going and checking on residents. They were on private property, they got the vehicle stuck, and there was significant damage to the vehicle. And at that point, the sheriff, based on that you had vehicles outside of the county, and I did ask, does Marion County allow deputies to take vehicles home? And the answer is they do, but they are not allowed to enforce any law enforcement services. So if they cross over the line, they have to call into Levy County or Citrus or Alachua. But I will follow up with both Marion County Sheriff as well as Levy County and bring back recommendations to the board.
Can you also look at the actual state enactment and see if we actually have governmental mandated jurisdiction for that?
What the special act does is it empowers and authorizes you to do any of those things. It does not mandate that you do those things. So what we've passed historically has been that the Marion County Sheriff provides law enforcement on the Marion
So that's the historic perspective, right? So if the Levy County side makes it's their policy not to enforce laws in subdivisions, or at least control them from a present standpoint.
Right.
Then if the citizens want there, then at least in that regard, we could possibly look at giving them the option to pay into our MSTU and have patrol from the Marion County side.
And what the special act does is it allows us to enter into interlocal agreements with Levy County, the sheriff, and
Okay.
enter into something that would allow the sheriff to go in.
Sure.
But because of the way that neighborhood watch crime prevention was working before, there was no need to have the agreement. And the sheriff has the right and the authority to terminate that agreement, but I will get with both agencies and bring recommendations back.
Yeah.
As well as what the special act requires the board to do and how we are providing each one of those services for both the Levy and Marion County residents.
And there's no reason why, if they don't want full, patrol too, I'm assuming that we could put in the budget if they wanted someone private to do that, it's a possibility. Or if they just wanna buy a vehicle or two with those kind of crime prevention, then volunteers from Rainbow Lakes could also at least do be in informational vessels.
That's it.
There was a legal
That's it.
concern about what the statute authorizes when it comes to neighborhood watches. They have to be underneath a sheriff. And in this particular case, on the Marion County side, the sheriff was not willing to allow that to happen. I will reach out to Levy County to see what Levy County will
Okay.
be willing to do.
Fair enough. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, thank you for taking that.
Thank you.
So that is the patrol side of things. Mr. Boyer, did you attempt to say something?
Yeah, Commissioner, we have never put in place a long-range plan for the MSP. We can work on that, and we can hold some sessions between the advisory board and staff and see what we can come up with and put a long-range plan in place if you guys wish to do that. In addition to that, for the MSD, the Act authorizes several different services that we have elected years ago not to provide those services. The sheriff does not get any funding from the MSD. For him to be able to patrol and enforce laws in Levy County, how is that going to be funded? In addition to that, similar to zoning, the Act authorizes the MSD to provide zoning regulation. That service has not been enacted years ago, and it's not funded. And we had some zoning issues between the two parts of Levy County and Marion County. Marion County is taking care of the Marion County side, and we apply our standard overall countywide planning and zoning. And we have shared a lot of information with Levy County. It's up to them to continue doing the zoning regulation on their part. We are not, the county zoning regulation does not govern the part in Levy County. And those are two services that I can bring to your attention that have never been funded to be provided specifically for the MSD.
So, and we do cost allocation for MSTU management.
We do cost allocation, and it is capped, what we talked about, at a certain level. And last year, we have made some changes in the position that they spoke about. It's a position we allocated outside the cost allocation. That position is serving the three MSTU, the MSD and the two MSTUs that we have in place today, which is Rainbow Lake Estate, Marion Oaks, Silver Spring Shores. We allocated that position specifically for those three locations, and that FTE is paying attention to only those three locations, coordination, planning, for what activities, what functions, that's what that person is doing.
Does that person attend those meetings out here, those monthly meetings?
Yes,
They do.
Who is that person?
Katie
Katie
Burton.
Burton. Very good. So, there is appropriate cost allocation for the services being provided. I hope that
It answers my, I'm sorry. Thank you, that does answer the question.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I apologize if this was not discussed in detail with you last year or the year before when we came up with that
Your
plan.
mic may not be on.
I can.
It is on. Yeah, I apologize if that was not discussed in detail with you when staff started working.
Okay.
And then the part-time positions, are those staffed today?
We do have a part-time position that's currently being advertised. We're trying to fill it. We actually had candidates that was going to fill that position and then they backed out.
The position is open, that's why they're not seeing anybody out here on the weekends, hoping, bringing that revenue. Does that include the youth center as well? Okay.
Yeah, all of that, the youth center hours and the kayak that we was referring to. Once we get that position on board, we should be able to make some adjustments to the schedule to allow that to happen.
Okay. And then the MSTU interactions, I know it was brought up as a concern, but they're speaking very highly of you all. You've heard what good looks like, and that is if there is a long-range plan, which we've answered, there is not a long-range plan for this, but certainly if it's something that they wish.
I think, Madam Chair, if I may, I think, we have a long-range plan for Marion County that includes empowering Marion County for success. Katie, will you please share that with the members? I think if you all take that, maybe look at that document, and then figure out how y'all plug in. I think it's better I think those suggestions, in all honesty, from a long-range plan, it's not better for me to come from the other side of town and tell y'all what to do, right? I think the better part is saying, hey, we have an overall plan for Marion County, and then what does the MSD want to do? How do y'all plug into that? What do you see in 5 years and in 10 years? And make sure that that's coordinated with staff to be on the capital improvement plan,
Thank you.
the action
Yeah.
plan, right? So
Yeah.
I think those things are very easy to do, and Chad's a great leader, and he'll be able to provide that. I know we've had a little turnover, that's something to it's just part of life, unfortunately, but Chad's gonna be a great leader for y'all, and anytime, I've never heard anyone not be able to get a meeting with him, a chat with him, and then use Katie as that intermediary. And if y'all want a budget workshop that is more in depth, I'm sure we can provide that for you ahead of time. I don't think that's an issue.
I welcome the constructive
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak? Well, I think this was good discussion, and I think we've got some future opportunities to look at, and Ms. Olinsky is going to be, we're looking at the agreement as well as talking to the two sheriffs on the patrolling situation. Any other board discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and move for acceptance, the Rainbow Lakes Estates MSD, Rainbow Lakes Estates Community Facility MSTU, Rainbow Lakes Estates MSTU for road improvements, Rainbow Lakes Estates Fire Protection MSBU for acceptance as talked about today with a couple changes from Audrey. And we'll move into our final budget public hearing at a date certain. I don't know what it is though.
Thank you. I've got a motion by Commissioner Zallen with a second by Commissioner McLean. Any further discussion? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We appreciate the conversation, and we look forward to coming back out at the final hearing date.
Just to state, the tentative hearing is Thursday, September the 5th. That will be at 5:50 p.m. for Rainbow Lakes Estates. And then the final hearing is scheduled for Monday, September the 23rd. Again, that will be at 5:50 at the McPherson Complex for both.
Very good. Thank you, Audrey. This meeting is adjourned.
How do we just